brahmachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Manachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Haribo, 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 Gora Haribo, Nitai
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. We are very fortunate today to have His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Swami Maharaj speak to us from the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So just a brief introduction of Maharaj before he starts the class. His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Swami Maharaj joined the Hare Krishna movement in 1972 and was initiated in the same year by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. From 1973 to 75, Maharaj was engaged in book distribution and also served as a pujari in Amsterdam, in Germany. Between 1977 and 1979, he traveled and preached with Bhakti Tirtha Swami, Harikesh Swami, Bhakti Shuddhir Goswami, Dwarkadish Prabhu Devamrita Swami throughout Eastern Europe. From 1982 to 85, he oversaw the Lord Nrsingadeva's worship in Simhachalan in Germany. In 1987, the GBC appointed him initiating guru, and in 1995, he compiled the Pancharatra Pradip, the ISKCON manual for temple worship, He also served as the ISKCON GBC minister for the DT department. Encouraged by ISKCON leaders, Maharaj resumed his formal education academic work, which was interrupted when he joined the temple in 1972. Maharaj has completed his Bachelor's of Religious Studies from the University of California. He has graduated from the Graduate Theological Union of Berkeley with a Master's in Religious Studies, and he has a PhD from the University of Oxford in Religious Studies. Krishna Kshetra Swami is now a research fellow with the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies and also acts as the Dean of Studies at the Bhaktivedanta College in Rotterdam, Belgium, where he has been teaching since 2002. His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Swami travels extensively throughout the world, teaching Krishna consciousness, counseling devotees, and giving support to spiritual communities all over the world. So we are so fortunate to have His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Swami with us today. So Maharaj, you are most welcome. Thank you very much for coming to give us the association.
Thank you, Prabhu, for your kind welcome and introduction. And I'm very happy to be with you, all of you today. ISKCON Africa or ISKCON West Africa, this is a new experience for me. I like traveling, and I'm also happy to not be traveling, but still be able to connect with with you so far away from Poland, which is where I am right now. So we're reading Srimad-Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 3, verse number 9. We can begin with some prayers. I will chant, Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatang Vitam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet nashtaprayeshu vabhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhagati naishtiki. So again, we're reading Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 3, verse number 9. This chapter is giving us a list of several of the avatars of the Lord. And Sutta Goswami is speaking. So the Sanskrit of the verse is as follows. Turye dharma-kalā-sarge nara-nārāyaṇāv bhūtvātmopaśamopetam akarot duścaraṁ tapaḥ. Turye dharma-kalā-sarge nara-nārāyaṇāv bhūtvātmopaśamopetam akarot duścaraṁ tapaḥ. Turye dharma-kalā-sarge nara-nārāyaṇāv bhūtvātmopaśamopetam akarot duścaraṁ tapaḥ. And one more time. Turye dharma-kalā-sarge nara-nārāyaṇāv bhūtvātmopaśamopetam akarot duścaraṁ tapaḥ. And quickly, the word-for-word translation, Turye, in the fourth of the line, Dharma-kalā, wife of Dharmarāja, Sarge, being born of nara-nārāyaṇau, named Nara and Nārāyaṇa, Rishi, sages, bhūtvā, becoming, ātma-upaśama, controlling the senses, upetam, for achievement of, akarot, undertook, duścaraṁ, very strenuous, tapaḥ, penance. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: in the fourth incarnation, the Lord became Nara and Nārāyaṇa, the twin sons of the wife of King Dharma. Thus he undertook severe and exemplary penances to control the senses. And the purport: as King Rishabha advised his sons, tapasya, or voluntary acceptance of penance for realization of the transcendence, is the only duty of the human being. It was so done by the Lord himself in an exemplary manner to teach us. The Lord is very kind to the forgetful souls. He therefore comes himself and leaves behind necessary instructions, and also sends his good sons as representatives to call all the conditioned souls back to Godhead. Recently, within the memory of everyone, Lord Chaitanya also appeared for the same purpose, to show special favor to fallen souls of this age of iron industry. The incarnation of Narayana is worshipped still in Badri Narayana on the range of the Himalayas. Mukam karati vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurung dinataranam. So we're getting a list of avatars of the Lord, one after another, in this third chapter. In this beginning canto of the 12 cantos of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Eventually, in this chapter, there is going to be mention of Krishna himself, Ete Changsa Kala Pungsa Krishna's tu Bhagavan Svayam, Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Ridayanti Yuge Yuge. So the word tu in that verse is pointed out by acharyas to be significant, by Jiva Goswami in particular, saying there are so many avatars, however, two, but Krishna Bhagavan Svayam Asti. Krishna is the supreme, or he is Bhagavan directly. He is Bhagavan himself, Svayam. But today we are looking at Nara-nārāyaṇa Rishi, or rishis. And it's interesting that in the translation, our friendly dog here is making sure that we are fully protected. So we understand from the verse, from the translation, Srila Prabhupada says, twin sons have appeared as the sons of the wife of King Dharma. The name of the wife is not mentioned. That is mentioned. Her name is mentioned elsewhere in the Bhagavatam, I believe in Canto 2, as her name being Murti. But twin sons, so there are two. And the Sanskrit indicates this also by the dual form. Sanskrit has a grammatical dual form. And so nara-nārāyaṇau, that "au" ending indicates two. We get this in our prayers to the six Goswamis. Vande Rupa Sanatanau Raghu Yugao Shri Jiva Gopala Kau. It's three sets of two. So that's in the dual form, so it's a recognition. There are two persons here. But sometimes they are referred to as one. And indeed, Srila Prabhupada in his translation says in the second sentence, thus he undertook severe and exemplary penances to control the senses. So it's kind of two in one. And there's a certain ambiguity there, but we will see later. There's also a detailed description of how this Nara-Nārāyaṇ, how they look, how they appear, what is their form. It appears in the 11th or 12th canto. We'll come to that. I'm happy to report just minutes ago, I was thinking about this, that Srila Prabhupada mentions at the end of this purport, and he mentions elsewhere in the Bhagavatam, that Nara-Nārāyaṇ Rishi are worshipped in Badri-Narayana. And I myself have never had the good fortune to take pilgrimage to Badrinath. Maybe someday I will go. So I wondered, that main temple in Badrinath, we've perhaps all seen photos of that temple, perhaps some of you have been there. I was wondering, so is the deity of that temple Nara-Nārāyaṇ? And the answer I just got a few minutes ago, a devotee sent me a message who has been there, said, yes, this is Nara-Nārāyaṇ. But now I am curious, from those of you who have been there, perhaps Sugopi has been there, what is the appearance? Is it two figures, two personalities, two forms, or one? And how do they look in the deity form? That would be interesting.
Yeah.
In any case,
Yeah. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yeah,
yes.
What I remember is that they are in the form of stones, and separate stones actually.
Okay.
Yeah, Shilas, in the form of Shilas. That's
Shilas.
what I remember. Yeah. That's what I
Okay.
remember. And deities are also there.
Yeah. Okay, so it's nice as we meditate on these forms of the Lord. I think I'll tend to use the plural form here. These forms of the Lord, it's nice to also associate them with the place where they stay and where they performed or still perform their austerities. Excuse me. And we understand from this verse and the purport that indeed their purpose in appearing is to teach, to give example of this essential feature, this essential opportunity of human life to perform austerity. Srila Prabhupada refers to the teaching of King Rishabdev to his sons, Nayam deho bhajanri loke kashtan kaman arhate vidbhujanye tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shudyat yasmat brahma sokyam tvanantam. Tapo divyam, this is what human life is for, to perform austerity. And if we're not performing austerity, there's a danger. And what is the danger? The danger is that we become degraded. When Srila Prabhupada gave a lecture on this verse, today's verse, he spoke on this point, as he would so many times, how in modern life, in modern civilization, there's no sense control. There's no culture of sense control. This is not a priority in modern Western culture to teach young people that sense control is a good thing. Or we may say some limited sense control is encouraged as much as is necessary in order to keep control over groups. So we all learned some degree of sense control in the classroom, going to school. We learned we have to be quiet when the teacher speaks and so on. And maybe we learned also some table manners at home. We learned certain aspects of being polite and so on. From very young, we learn to say thank you when we receive something, that sort of thing. All right, that is some degree of sense control. So certainly we are distinguished in that respect. But still, Srila Prabhupada says, the overall spirit is in human modern civilization is that the senses are there for enjoyment. They're not for restraint. And so, as he would so many times say, what do we have? He would say we have a civilization of hogs, dogs, camels, and asses. Shvavit varahostra karai sangstuta purusha pashu. Nayat karna patopeta jatu namagadagraja. The problem is, again, according to, is it Sutta Goswami or Shonaka Rishi says in the second canto, the problem is that people are not valuing, they're not giving their attention to the study of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And therefore, they're being praised by others for their accomplishments, whatever those might be. But the real accomplishment of human life, they're neglecting. And therefore, those who are praising them are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. And they who are being praised are similarly like like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. And so, as Prabhupada says in that same lecture, everyone is clamoring for freedom, the idea being freedom to enjoy the senses, but what it boils down to is the freedom to become like a dog or to become a dog. And this is all going on because of neglect of the simple reality that we are all under the control of material nature and we don't recognize it. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. We're thinking karta aham, we are thinking I am the doer. Why are we thinking this? We're thinking this because of our identification with this most subtle of elements of the gross elements, namely ahankara. And as a result, we are being dragged from one body to another. So Nara-Nārāyaṇa rishis are teaching austerity, teaching tapasya. And as a result of that teaching, or because of that teaching, or to help us remember the value of that teaching, they demonstrate the power of austerity. And so, for example, let me get my reference here. I think this is it. Okay, here in the 11th canto, chapter 4, starting with verse 6, we have a bit more more explanation of who is Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi. I'll read the translation. It says, Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi, who is perfectly peaceful and is the best of sages, again singular, was born as the son of Dharma and his wife Murti. So here Murti is mentioned. And Murti, the daughter of Daksha. Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi taught the devotional service of the Lord by which material work ceases, and he himself perfectly practiced this knowledge. He is living even today, his lotus feet served by the greatest of saintly persons. And then, I think it goes on from there. Yes, here comes the the episode. It's kind of a humorous episode. King Indra became fearful, thinking that Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi would become very powerful by his severe penances and seize Indra's heavenly kingdom. Thus, Indra, not knowing the transcendental glories of the incarnation of the Lord, did what Indra does in such circumstances. He sent Cupid and his associates to the Lord's residence in Badarika-ashrama. As the charming breezes of spring created a most sensuous atmosphere, Cupid himself attacked the Lord with arrows in the form of the irresistible glances of beautiful women. So that's kind of the routine practice of Indra in order to maintain his position, to keep anyone trying to get his position through austerities to fall down. Sometimes Indra is successful in stopping someone's austerities. Famously, Vishvamitra Muni was successfully interrupted from his austerities by the Apsara Menaka, sent, as I remember, by Indra. But of course, he's not going to be successful with Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi. Rather, what is going to happen? Next verse, verse 8, the primeval Lord, understanding the offense committed by Indra, did not become proud. Instead, he spoke laughingly as follows to Cupid and his followers who were trembling before him. Do not fear, O mighty Madana, O wind god, and wives of the demigods. Rather, please accept these gifts I am offering you and kindly sanctify my ashrama by your presence. One of the dangers for the sage, it's said it's the larger danger than lust is anger. So it sometimes happens that when the temptress comes to disturb the sage, seeing what is happening, becomes angry and may curse the temptress. This is precisely what Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi do not do. Rather, they welcome these temptresses and the tempter, Cupid, Kamadeva. And in the next verse, it's further explained, my dear King Nimi, When Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi thus spoke, eradicating the fear of the demigods, they bowed their heads with shame and addressed the Lord as follows to invoke his compassion. Our dear Lord, you are always transcendental, beyond the reach of illusion, and therefore you are forever changeless. Your causeless compassion toward us, despite our great offense, is not at all unusual in you, since innumerable great sages who are self-satisfied and free from anger and false pride bow down humbly at your lotus feet. So they've come to humble themselves. Now, I don't know why, but I feel like I've accidentally skipped a verse, because as I remember, it's said here that Nara and Nārāyaṇa Rishi produce from themselves any number of beautiful women who are so much more beautiful than these apsaras being sent to disturb him. And it's therefore that they are humbled. Incidentally, there's another, I don't know if we can say another version, yeah, a slight variation we can say on this, is in the Vishnu Dharmottara Purana, in which when Cupid comes, the apsaras come, Nara-nārāyaṇa, I believe it's Nārāyaṇa, takes he takes some, I think he takes a mango, and he draws a picture on his thigh of a beautiful woman, and this beautiful woman picture on his thigh comes to life, manifests from his thigh, and she comes to be called Urvasi, Uruvasi, she who lives in the thigh, or resident of the thigh. So in any case, Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi is demonstrating the power of austerity. But we may want to say, well, yes, but what do you expect? After all, he is the supreme personality of Godhead, so it's not difficult for him to not be disturbed by these temptress apsaras. Well, yes, we can say like that, but the example is also given. I believe it may be Srila Prabhupada gives this example elsewhere, that the confectioner, the person who professionally makes sweets, is not attracted by the sweets that he manufactures. He's not hankering for any sweets because he's surrounded by them all the time. And similarly, Krishna, and we may use the name Krishna, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Svayam, the original personality of Godhead, who is surrounded by the beauties. In fact, in Vrindavan, the gopis, who are described as the most beautiful women, he is not interested in these apsaras. Okay, so one thing also striking from the Bhagavatam version is that, let's see, go to number 6. Is that Markandeya Rishi worships Nara-Nārāyaṇa. This is in the 12th canto, and it's in chapter 8. And what I find particularly interesting here is that prior to the prayers which are given here of Markandeya offering prayers to Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi, is that Markandeya is performing austerity. He's performing austerity over the lifetimes of 6 manus, which Maharaj Parikshit is, Maharaj Parikshit is departed by now. I think he's being asked in any case, maybe it's Sutta being asked. So, no, maybe I'd have to check. Maybe Maharaj Parikshit's still here. Asking, so how is this that Markandeya has been living so long? And the answer is, well, he was able to do austerity over this period of 6 manus, after which Indra had his same anxiety. Again, Indra was worried for his losing his job. He's always seems to be insecure about his position. He sends Cupid, he sends the Apsaras with Cupid to try to tempt Markandeya. But Markandeya is not at all disturbed. Why is he not at all disturbed? Because he has been practicing austerity all this time. So the strength of his austerity allows him to resist any kind of temptation that may have come his way. So then we're getting almost a mirror pastime. There is Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi. They are demonstrating this power of austerity. The devotee of Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi, Markandeya Rishi, he is demonstrating this power of austerity. If we come to modern time, of course, we like to remember Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur. He was able to resist all temptation as he was chanting the holy name. And he is again an example of not becoming angry, but quite the opposite, simply taking the situation as we would say a preaching opportunity, and thus transforming. There are 2 episodes described. First, the unnamed prostitute, and then Maya Devi herself, making them devotees of Krishna simply by hearing his chanting of the holy name. There are these prayers being offered to Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi, indicating his special identity. Tasmai namo bhagavate purushaya bhumne vishvaya vishvagurave paradaivataya narayanaya rishaye cha narottamaya hangsaya samyatagire nigameshvaraya. Translation: I offer my humble obeisance to him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the all-pervading and all-inclusive form of the universe, as well as its spiritual master. I bow down to Lord Narayan, the supremely worshipable deity, appearing as a sage, singular, and also to the saintly Narayana, second singular, the best of human beings, who is fixed in perfect goodness, fully in control of his speech, and the propagator of the Vedic literatures. So that's interesting. Nara seems in particular is credited, is identified as being controller of his speech, combined with being propagator of the Vedic literature. And this reminds us of the other essential function of Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi, which is that they are instructing Narada Muni in the Bhagavatam. It's mentioned that the original teaching of the Bhagavatam is by Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi or rishis to Narada Muni. Then Narada is speaking to Vyasa, and then Vyasa, and from there. That is mentioned in the 12th canto, again, in the context of description of how the Vedic literature have all been distributed, manifested in the course of time. I still wanted to get this further description. But I've failed to note exactly which verse. Let's see. I don't want to take time looking for things. That's no fun. Okay, I won't look for it, but it's it may be in the 5th canto describing Nara-Nārāyaṇa. One of them is black and the other is white. That is mentioned. So for ourselves, we can be happy that we have the benefit of the teaching which has come from Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi to Narada, to Vyasa, in the form of Srimad-Bhagavatam. We have access to Srimad-Bhagavatam, of course, by the grace, the divine grace of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And as we make our way in the course of our lives and progress on the spiritual path, we can continue to practice the austerities that we do, the little austerities. Srila Prabhupada made this point in his lecture, how in this age it is not possible to perform the austerities of the likes of Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi. But he said, we can perform a little austerity, short austerity. He used the word short, little short, or short little penance. And then at the end of that lecture, he gives two things. The opportunity, of course, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who Prabhupada mentions in this purport, has appeared within the memory of us all. I like that phrase. He's mentioned it also in a lecture, I believe. Within the memory of us all, 540 years ago, 40 some years ago, whatever. What does that mean? Within the memory of us all means within our collective cultural memory. Within the period of what can be called historical time, the Lord has appeared. And what has he done? He's made the penance for us, the austerity for us, super easy. Just chant Hare Krishna. Well, yes, chant Hare Krishna, not just chant Hare Krishna. Chant Hare Krishna, make this your life and soul. Take shelter in Krishna's names. And Srila Prabhupada says in this in this lecture he gave on today's verse, he said, and be careful. Be careful of Maya. Don't allow yourself to be distracted, and keep safe in the shelter of the Lord. So I'll stop there and see if there's any discussion, questions, comments, complaints, further elaboration.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. So if anyone have question, please unmute yourself and ask Maharaj question directly. Thank you very much.
There's also, if someone's shy to speak, there's the chat. Can write a chat and we can find it.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for blessing our platform today. My name is Sahadev Das. I was fortunate enough to have met you once in Gitanagari.
Oh.
Yes. I had a question concerning austerities, which you partially talked about getting to the latter part of your lecture.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I think Lord Chaitanya Srila Prabhupada has been so kind, so merciful to us fallen souls in this age that, as Srila Prabhupada himself says in the purport, as King Rishabhadev advised his sons, tapasya, voluntary acceptance of penance for realization of the transcendence, is the only duty of the human being. And when I look at ISKCON as Srila Prabhupada gave us, I do not find anything I can call as austerities. I'm not trying to say I'm very strong, I'm very powerful. No, not at all. That like what we are taught to be practicing in ISKCON is pretty much like simple things that every human being ought to do. Mm-hmm. So my question is, what sort of austerities are we performing in ISKCON in order to attain this transcendence?
Okay, thank you, bro. Sahadev. Well, Srila Prabhupada, when he's referring to the austerities that we perform in our practice, he is in particular referring to the four regulative principles, which, as you said, this is, something every human being should do. And yes, Srila Prabhupada would say this so many times. He would say that the observance of the four regulative principles only brings us up to the platform of being human. That's just getting us up to, that's just getting us to base camp. Mountain climbers, they're climbing Mount Everest. So first they get to base camp. And beyond that, however, it's also understood that, well, let's take it this way. In chapter 17, Bhagavad Gita, we have this summary of austerities in the mode of goodness, one list of austerities for the body, one for the voice or speech, and one for the mind. And Svadhyaya Abhyasanam, the practice of Svadhyaya, is there. It's either in speech, it must be in speech, Anudvegakaram Bhakyam, satyam priyahitam chayat svadhyaya bhyasanam chaiva vanmayam tapa uchate. Yeah, so the austerity in the mode of goodness includes svadhyaya, or recitation, the practice of recitation of Veda is what it comes to. And what this means for followers of Lord Chaitanya in particular, what is emphasized especially is the chanting of the Lord's names, and particularly the Maha Mantra. So that can be understood also as austerity. But now you're going to say, wait, chanting Hare Krishna is not mode of goodness, it's transcendental. Yes, definitely. It's Shuddha Sattva. But the practices in the mode of goodness, and we just read Nara represents control of speech and represents mode of goodness, we can say it extends out to be inclusive of the transcendental practice of chanting the holy name. But still, we have to be careful if we say chanting the Maha Mantra is our tapasya, because on the other side, we know from the Padma Purana, and we are much reminded, especially by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, of the 10 Nama aparadhas. So one of these, the 8th aparadha, is to consider chanting of the holy name to be like doing doing rituals, doing austerities, etc. To think that these activities are somehow equivalent, or this is equivalent to that. No, the chanting of the Maha Mantra goes beyond that. And so we can understand that on one side, yes, you can say, oh, we don't really have much in the way of austerity, or maybe we fast from grains on Ekadashi, or maybe some devotees fast completely, or during festivals, a few festivals in the year we fast. What's the big deal? Well, we chant Hare Krishna, and we should not be embarrassed or, think we shouldn't minimize the chanting of Hare Krishna as austerity. It's austerity plus. It's going beyond. And of course, it's wonderful because we find that as we chant, make the practice of chanting the core of our sadhana, we find that we can relish it. It's not austerity in the sense of being painful. It's liberating. It's anandam buddhivardhanam. So, and of course, if one wants to do more austerity, if one finds it's possible to eat less and sleep less, that's great. And Srila Prabhupada said that sometimes. He would say, we should be reducing our eating, sleeping, mating, and defending down to nil. So there's no one stopping you from that. Is that okay?
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
I will.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have a question.
Okay.
My name is Kavi Kanapuradas from Nigeria.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. So my question is that you talk about austerity, just like Zade Prabhu asked question please, I want to know, I remember in one of the purports in 7th Canto, the story of Dharmarāja when he was going around and he met the Avadutas. I forgot the purport now, but Prabhupada mentioned very clearly in the purport there that devotee want to make advancement should reduce his eating to once a day. So I remember many times also, Bhattacharya Swami Maharaj, when he was here, I think he followed that principle very strictly. He eats once a day, mostly throughout his life. And I'm now looking at Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Ramachandra, one of the these devotees tried to criticize Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for eating. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reduced his eating. And because of that, devotees were not happy. Then after he left, then the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu again continued his way of eating, which makes look like Achintya Beda Beta Tattva. One place you say, don't do this, and the other place you are doing opposite. So how can we, devotees who are making advancement in Krishna consciousness, can we balance this? Because eating actually has a lot effect in our spiritual sadhana.
Interesting point, interesting question. I think the key is in one of the words that you mentioned, namely balance. How do we find balance? That's something each one of us has to find ourselves. The how is, my experience is it's largely a matter of experiment and experience. We see ourselves what we can manage and what we can do over time. We know the priority is not austerity for austerity's sake. The priority is austerity for Krishna's sake, for serving Krishna. I tell devotees my own experience as a quite new devotee. I think it was maybe the second year I was with devotees. I was for some time really trying to cut down eating, and I was reducing it quite a bit. At the same time, I was a book distributor. This was in Amsterdam. And one day I was in the temple and just sort of from nothing, no apparent cause, my nose started bleeding. And the temple president noticed this, I guess, and he said, you have to eat more. And that's not all he said. He said, we're going to make you eat much more. And so he had one devotee prepare for about a 2-week period. He prepared a stack of 10 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, a very American thing because the president at that time was American. So he said, you have to eat all of these every day. So that's what I did. I'm not still on that diet. But so the principle, we want to always keep the principle in view, and the principle is to maintain our health, good health, for serving Krishna. Prabhupada said sometimes, health is the priority. First thing, be healthy, keep your health, and then everything else. And yes, we want to be on the alert. Am I doing something unnecessary? Am I eating too much? Maybe I can reduce. Let me try. Let me see what happens if I eat once a day. But then if you eat once a day and you eat a huge feast once a day, and you end up, taking a 3-hour nap afterwards, maybe that's also not working. What you might also experiment with is eating one substantial meal a day and then making another meal just fruit or maybe just a smoothie, something like that. But it's very individual. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna does not give us specifics when he says that one should not eat too much or too little, or sleep too much or sleep too little. He doesn't tell us eat X number of grams, and he doesn't tell us sleep X number of hours. He just says not too much, not too little.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. I'm very grateful.
My pleasure. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, I have a question also.
Yes.
I have heard that Krishna and Arjuna, they are also considered Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi.
Ah, yes. This question just came up yesterday in another discussion.
Okay. So my question is this Nara-Nārāyaṇa Rishi in Badrinath, are they an expansion of Krishna and Arjuna?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I said yesterday, I don't know an exact answer. One would need, possibly that's explained in Laghu Bhagavatamrita from within our tradition. That's all I can suggest. Otherwise, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, all that I could find in purports, and most of the purports of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada is simply translating from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur's Bengali purports. But there he says in Adi Lila that nara-nārāyaṇa rishi are Vaibhava Prakash as opposed to Prabhava Prakash. That is to say, they are partially potent as opposed to fully potent. And later he mentions, or this may be in a verse, that Nara-nārāyaṇa rishi are Leela avatars. But I've not found the explicit connection of Nara-nārāyaṇa and Krishna and Arjuna. I know that connection is made, but I don't have it right at hand. So I can't say more about that without wildly speculating.
Thank you much. Prabhu, if there is no more question.
I have a question, Maharaj.
Yes?
Oh, well, again, I would say thank you for blessing the platform today. If you could so kindly visit us from time to time, we will truly appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was just a humble request, but I have a question.
Okay.
And that is, you were telling us different times where Indra felt his position threatened.
Yes.
As usual, he tries to fall these great sages through sex. And I heard one time an interviewer was asking Srila Prabhupada a question, if Srila Prabhupada can perform a miracle. And Srila Prabhupada answer to him was, if a beautiful woman comes around, you're going to be attracted. I will not be attracted.
Right.
Why is it that nature makes it so difficult for the living entity to resist this sex act? It's like the basis of all the problems we have in this world. Like
I have the same question. Well, one explanation, if you can call it that, a narrative explanation, is in the pastime of Kamadeva with Lord Shiva. When Kamadeva went to tempt Lord Shiva, Shiva is one example of one who, doing austerity, became angry. He glanced at Kamadeva and burned him to ashes on the spot. A real fast incineration took place, leaving apparently nothing but ashes, maybe not even ashes. But then Kamadeva becomes known as Ananga. And we have this name in the Kama Gayatri, which of course is referring to the transcendental Kamadeva Krishna. But this name Ananga means literally Anga, one who has no body. But what happens when he loses his body, Kamadeva enters into the bodies of all beings. So we're all dealing with Kamadeva living right in our bodies. And so to overcome, the only way to overcome is to worship the transcendental Kamadeva, which we do with the Kama Gayatri mantra. That's our understanding. Yeah, but that's also my question. Why it's so difficult? Krishna says, Daivi hi esha gunamayi mama maya dur ati aya. This maya is mine. It's mama maya. It's my maya. And it is dur ati aya. Aya is from the verbal root I, which means to go. It's one of various verbal roots for go, gam being the other one, main. I, and then it becomes aya. Ati means very much or extreme, and dur means far or difficult. So dur atiyaya, this maya is so very difficult to overcome. Krishna is saying, because it's mine. It's my power, and I'm making it so you can blame Krishna. Which means also, and then Krishna gives, what does he say in the second half of the verse? Mam eva ye prapadyante. Mam eva, that eva is indicating exclusiveness. Me only. Mam eva ye, those who prapadyante, take shelter or take refuge. Mayam etam mayam. This mayam, which is there in the neuter form. Mayam etam taranti. They taranti. They cross over. What do they cross over? Mayam etam mayam. So Krishna gives us the problem in that verse. What is it? Chapter 4, verse 14, Bhagavad Gita. He's giving us the problem. He's making clear why it's a problem, how big of a problem it is. And then he gives, in the second half of the verse, he gives the solution. Hare Krishna.
So, in the absence of no question, can we all unmute ourselves and chant Hare Krishna for Maharaj to thank Maharaj for coming to this platform?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. West African Yatra ki jai.
Jai.
Dharmarāja Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande. Hari.
Jai. His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
We hope Maharaj you come again sometime to give us your holy association.
Thank you.
Jai.